Hello, everybody, and welcome to this edition of the Overtime Podcast, a Cold Front Report multicast. I'm one of your two co-hosts, Clayton Garrett. You can find me on Twitter at CFR Clayton, and joining me as always,
I'm Jeff Uvino. You can find me on Twitter at RealJUVEINO.
Jeff. This Sunday night performance by the Bills, there's a lot of people talking about it. A lot of people on the national stage. You got your podcasters that always talk about it every week. But what were your overall thoughts following this performance, which was kind of a murky first half, but a second half resurgence for the Bills in a way? What were your thoughts after this game?
Yeah, halftime adjustments. That was the reason the Bills won this game. The Steelers blitzed Josh Allen relentlessly the entire night, and it worked in the first half. But I thought that Brian Daboll and Josh Allen made adjustments at the half that figured out a way to beat Pittsburgh's defense just enough in that third quarter, and then the Buffalo defense took it from there.
Yeah, and Taron Johnson making that pick six right before the conclusion of the first half was really what kind of swung the momentum back in the direction of the Bills. And that was a big play. And we'll get into the Bills defense here in a second. But I want to talk about the Bills offense and what they were able to do there in that second half, which was ultimately the reason why they won the football game. And there's a lot of mixed feelings about Josh Allen and his performance. And what do you take for more? What do you give more weight? His inability to move the ball and have some sort of consistency with efficiency on the offensive side of the ball in the first half, or his ability to come out in the second half, all guns blazing, complete 11 of his first 11 passes, and throw for 154 yards in the third quarter for 2 touchdowns. I thought Josh Allen's performance in the second half was ultimately the reason why the Bills won this game. And I understand it was an ugly first half. You kind of saw some of the Josh Allen we thought was gone. And, after his stellar play in this season, we thought we weren't going to see that kind of sloppy performance again. But in the second half, he came out there all guns blazing, and he looked like the MVP caliber that we've come to know this season.
Yeah, and the Bills' offensive line looked overwhelmed in the first half, and therefore so did Allen. The entire Pittsburgh defense played well in the first half. Their pass rush was getting to the quarterback. Their defensive backs were making great plays in the air, and they didn't allow Buffalo receivers to come down with the ball. I mean, even when Allen was finding closely guarded receivers, getting the ball in the tight spots, D-backs were swiping that ball away. I mean, there was really nothing that Buffalo offense could get going in the first half, but I really thought that Brian Daboll's halftime adjustments helped out Josh Allen. They were able to get the ball to Stephon Diggs. They were able to put 2 great drives together, which proved to be enough because of how well the Bills defense played. And there are 2 things the Bills did on the offensive side of the ball in this game that impressed me. The first was the halftime adjustments. They looked completely overwhelmed by the Steelers defense in the first half, but they came out in the third quarter and led 2 impressive touchdown drives. The second thing that impressed me was the final drive by the Bills offense. They get the ball with 7 minutes and 11 seconds remaining in the game, and Pittsburgh doesn't see the ball again. It reminded me of the drive that the Kansas City Chiefs put together at the end of the game to finish off the Bills. The Bills converted 3 third downs on that drive. The first was the 3rd and 11 when Allen found Dawson Knox for 16 yards, and the next 2 were each on 3rd and 1. And Allen snuck for the first one and gave it off to Zach Moss to pick up the second one. 5 total first down conversions for the Bills on that drive. The defense picked them up the entire game, but the Bills offense returned the favor at the end of the game.
Yeah, and I thought that was a large reason in part in why the Bills won this game. Scott Vanaloo, yeah, that's an excellent question. It's a bit premature. I definitely want to talk about that during the duration of this show, and I will get to your question. And to all the live viewers watching right now, leave your questions and comments throughout the duration of the show. Jeff and I will be sure to address them when accordingly. But in this game, I agree with you that after the performance against the 49ers, which I thought Brian Daboll, I thought that was his best coaching performance as an offensive coordinator in the NFL. I really did. I thought it was the best put together performance, most well-rounded performance, and he really had the defense on his heels with excellent play calling combined with excellent play design. And then in this game, I was a bit discouraged after that first half. I was a tad frustrated. I wasn't going in all in on Brian Daboll like a lot of people might anticipate that I would, but I was discouraged after that first half, seeing this Bills offense kind of fall back into their former ways of when they're inefficient, and they weren't efficient in that first half. And I thought that was partially due in part to not only the lack of execution by Josh Allen, but also the lack of rhythm from the play calling. Only 5 carries for your running backs. I thought that was a very poor decision. I thought they were making poor decisions in that first half. But as you touched on, Jeff, the adjustments they made at halftime, that is more important to me. That is more indicative to me than any kind of lull in the first half, really. Because the one thing we have talked about all season with this Bills offense was their inability to put points up in the third quarter and how that could potentially bite them in the rear leading up. How that could potentially bite them in the rear against some of these quality opponents like the Steelers, like the Seahawks. But in this game, that's what ultimately fueled their victory. Their ability to go down the field with 2 consecutive drives and put up 14 points just like that in the third quarter is why they won this game. The ability to go into halftime, make the necessary adjustments, and not only make those adjustments, but execute on said adjustments is why they won this game. And another reason why they won this game is Stefon Diggs. They come out of there in halftime after Josh Allen only completed 10 passes of 24 attempts in the first half for, I believe, 70 some odd yards. And then he goes out there in the third quarter and he's looking for his alpha wide receiver, and he found him plenty times. As Stefon Diggs, the stat sheet in the third quarter would have led all receivers in this game for stat totals. And Stefon Diggs was the difference maker in that third quarter. Stefon Diggs was the heartbeat of this Bills offense in the third quarter. And, that third quarter surge that we've been hoping and praying for all season, they picked an excellent game to have their best third quarter. Not just this season, but in the last 2 or 3 years as well.
Yeah, and what we saw in the first half of this game was just a great NFL defense through and through. The Steelers defense was doing everything right. I didn't think that Josh Allen played bad in the first half. I mean, neither turnover was really his fault. The interception, his arm got hit on the way through, and then on the Dawson Knox fumble, that was whatever it was. But he obviously didn't play well. He looked flustered in the pocket a lot because he had pressure in his face on almost every play. But I didn't think Josh Allen played bad in the first half. And then in the second half, you're exactly right, Clayton. Stefon Diggs comes to life. And it seemed that in the second half of this season, the Bills offense goes how Stefon Diggs goes. When Allen and Diggs are in rhythm, the Bills offense works well. When they're not, we don't see as much on the offensive side of the ball from the Bills. And that's not to say that Allen can't spread the ball around, because we see him get the ball ample amounts of times to Cole Beasley, to Gabe Davis, to his tight ends. But when Stefon Diggs is playing like he did in that third quarter, is the Bills' offense unstoppable? It may be, especially how they're playing right now. Now, I don't know if this is the best we're going to see the Bills' offense play all year, but if this becomes the norm, then I don't know if there's a defense in the NFL that can stop this team, stop this offense.
I don't know. That was the best defense right there. Everybody wanted to talk about how Josh Allen looked in that first half. I click on Twitter and I see all these national media pundits and ass clowns like Nick Wright talking about how Allen played awful in this game. Well, really, what are you doing? You are being a lazy analyst if you are going to sit there and just analyze one bad half of football, and it's not even the most important half of football. I understand we talk about every quarter having its worth. We talk about every snap being important in a football game. That's true. That is absolutely true. But like you said at the onset, Jeff, the Bills defense kept the Bills offense in this game, because the Bills offense was in a lull in that first half. And what else do you anticipate against one of the best defenses in the league in terms of just about every statistical category that you can find and dig up? What are they? I'm not saying that's an excuse for this offense to sit there and not score any points in the first half. Well, they scored a field goal, but not convert any touchdowns in the first half. That's not an excuse necessarily. That's just a valid reasoning for it. But you're talking about an offense that not only did they go through that lull in the first half, but Josh Allen was resilient enough. Brian Daboll was resilient enough to come out there in the second half, put that awful first half behind them. And I agree with you, Jeff. The turnover wasn't necessarily his fault. And Josh Allen, I did say Josh Allen wasn't playing well in that first half, because he wasn't. But then again, it wasn't necessarily all of his fault. He was getting pressure. They were sending a lot of blitz as they anticipated. But the Bills went in there at halftime, and it felt like that the Steelers didn't have a counterpunch for the Bills' counterpunch. The Bills took the information that they knew, and they knew the Steelers were going to keep blitzing them. but it's almost like the Steelers didn't anticipate the Bills to make a valid adjustment for their various blitz packages, and that's ultimately what bit them in this game. And it was all the more promising for this offense to be able to make an adjustment like that and just get up on one of the best defenses in the league, as Josh Allen carved him up for 11 straight completions, and Stephon Diggs just charged through this defense like a hot knife through butter. And I really don't know what people want to see from Josh Allen, because I've seen a lot from Josh Allen this year. Everybody's seen a lot from Josh Allen this year, but I didn't see what he did on Sunday night yet. I didn't. I haven't seen Josh Allen go out there in the first half, figuratively lay an egg, statistically and execution wise and efficiency wise. He wasn't spectacular in the first half. And yes, you can spread blame to whoever you want. You can spread responsibility to the offensive line and the receivers and what have you. But matter of fact is, the Bills' offense was not good in the first half, partially due in part to Josh Allen's lack of execution. And you saw him come out there on primetime football up against the best defense in football and be a resilient quarterback and come out there in the second half and fire 11 straight completions. That's as promising to me as anything Josh Allen has shown this season, because that is a huge trait when playing quarterback in the NFL. Can you go out there, make a mistake, come back, and fire on all cylinders? And they went 0 to 100 real quick after that first half, and that was extremely promising. And people have a lot to be optimistic about with this Bills offense.
It's interesting to me how the mainstream narrative changed throughout the game. The narrative of, mainstream media, mainstream fans that are seeing the Bills play in the national spotlight. In the first half, everybody was saying Josh Allen sucks. Josh Allen's playing bad. The Bills offense isn't very good. The Steelers are showing us, they're exposing this Bills offense. And then the Bills come out in the third quarter and they march the ball down the field multiple times. Okay, so the narrative doesn't change from Josh Allen's bad, the Bills offense is bad. Now it's the Steelers that suck. The Steelers suck because the Bills are playing well. When the Bills are playing poorly, it's on themselves. When the Bills are playing well, it's because their opponent is inferior. And that is what national media and national fans have been saying all season about this team. It can't possibly be because the Bills are playing well. No, that would be nonsense. In the second half, the Bills handed the Steelers defense their ass in the third quarter. And the narrative was that the Steelers defense was bad. And that's just a perfect example of, this Bills team just needing to earn everybody's respect that much more, having a chip on their shoulder, if you will. But the thing that really impressed me the most in this game was how the Bills managed their lead and how they've done that the last few weeks, because managing leads and holding on to leads is invaluable. The worst type of team to root for is a team that gets up in games and then blows the lead and loses at the end. The Bills have gotten leads in each of their last few games, and this game was no different. They get up by 11, and I already mentioned it, but that last drive to end the game, the Bills get the ball back with 7 minutes left, and they don't give it back. That is more impressive to me than anything else. That's what Patrick Mahomes does, and that's why he's the best quarterback in the league, because he does that all the time. You don't want to give Patrick Mahomes the ball at all, especially in the fourth quarter. And that's what Josh Allen is becoming, because he was able to orchestrate this drive. They got it done in the run game as well. So the whole offense should get credit for this, including the offensive line. They had 2 of their 3 third down conversions in this drive were via run. One of them a sneak with Allen, which is just another one of his many tools that he has. But that drive was so impressive because, like I said before, it reminded me of what the Chiefs did to the Bills, and that's the mark of a really good team. If you can get leads late in games and your offense and defense work together to keep them, and you play 4 quarters of football.
And going along with what you're talking about with this team learning how to play with a lead, which is ultimately what you're saying. This team is learning how to play winning football. We've seen this team in the past be able to score points, be able to get up in games in the first half, but struggle maintaining and showing no mercy in the second half with that lead. And that 7-minute and 11-second drive to end this game, that is indicative of a team having their maturation process, watching their maturation process develop, because this is a team that's learning how to play with a lead. And I give a ton of credit to this offense being able to have a 7-minute drive to close out that game. Because if you're on that Steelers defense, what are you saying? You're saying get them off the field in 3 plays and give your offense a valid shot at potentially trying to drive down the field and win this game. And I understand they were down 2 possessions and it was unlikely, but 7 minutes left in the game, it's manageable. It's absolutely manageable for an NFL defense. And the Bills offense could have taken a turn for the worse there, but they didn't. The best case scenario happened. And the offense was able to execute not only up front, not only in the backfield, but on all cylinders to be able to close out that game with 7 minutes left. And that is a sign of a young football team coming to form and finding and seeing the fruition of their maturation process as the season goes on. Because that's a huge concern for all of us. That has been a huge concern for all of us for 2 years now. Can this Bills offense put a team out after having solid performances, solid execution, and getting your lead? How can you play with a lead? And you didn't see the Bills run the football a whole lot in this game. You didn't. And I credit that. I partially credit their not wanting to run the football in the first half as to why they were inefficient. But in the second half, I felt like it was well-timed. It was sprinkled in, at perfect moments. They ultimately exceeded 100 yards rushing in this game. And you saw both of these running backs carry the ball 20 times combined. And I thought, that's not a ton. That's not a huge workload for either of those guys. But the point is that it was enough. It was enough to force that Steelers defense to play honest. It was enough to force that Steelers defense to not blitz every single play like they were in the first half. And it was enough to force them to not just pin their ears back and come flying in the face of Josh Allen, because that ultimately was the reason why the Bills were unable to move the ball in that first half. And really at this point in the season, with this Bills offense, I have more answers than questions. The only question I have at this point about the Bills offense is whether or not they've peaked. And considering they've had a consistent line of production all season, I don't see a peak. I just see a team that's rolling on all cylinders on that side of the ball. And it's large credit due in part to Brian Daboll being able to adjust at halftime and have this team's best third quarter of the season. Josh Allen coming out of halftime and firing on all cylinders. That is why the Bills won this game. And also a reason why the Bills won this game is because their defense kept them in it in the first half. And we cannot overlook the Bills' defensive performance in this game, I feel like. Because if the Bills' defense was unable to hold that Steelers offense in the first half to just 7 points, we're talking about a completely different ball game here. I understand we can sit here and talk about the Steelers' inability to remain consistent on that side of the ball and their approach to how it could lead to them having lulls in the first half like they did. But matter of fact is, those are 4 damn good wide receivers. That is a Hall of Fame quarterback back there. And that is James Conner back there, who ultimately did get hurt. But that is a well-rounded offense, in my opinion, that, yes, they have had their issues running the football in the last 6 games. But returning their starting running back, returning their starting center, all indications were pointing towards the Steelers being able to run the ball in this game more so than they have in the last 6 weeks. So I was worried about that heading into this game. But the Bills defense silenced my worries as this offense was unable to execute. And the Bills defense were making plays in the first half, getting that Steelers offense off the field and ultimately giving the Bills offense an opportunity to do what they needed to do and win this game and not have a huge lead or a huge deficit to try and come back from.
224 total yards allowed, 47 rushing yards allowed, 2.8 yards per carry allowed. We led with the offense because what they did was impressive to come back, overcome how well the Pittsburgh defense played in the first half. But the Bills defense won this game. For as bad as the Bills offense was in the first half, Pittsburgh's offense looked just as bad. And it was because they had no run game, which we knew going in, and the Bills controlled the Steelers' playmakers. When I picked the Steelers to win last week, I wasn't aware that Ben Roethlisberger's arm issue was that bad. I thought that he'd be able to throw the ball a little better against the Bills defense. And if he could make a couple of the deep throws that he didn't, the game might be different. He really couldn't throw the ball down the field with accuracy at all. I mean, the Levi Wallace interception, which I was really happy for Levi to make, and he made a nice play. If Ben throws that ball out in front of the receiver, it's at least a reception and maybe a touchdown. But the Bills defense went punch for punch with perhaps the best defense in football. And that was a statement, I think, by this unit. It was a statement to the rest of the league. The Buffalo Bills are not a one-sided football team, and they're going to raise hell on both sides of the ball.
And we've talked a lot about this, about how if the Bills defense is able to find their footing and able to perform the way they did in this game, then this is going to be a scary team. And they are. They are a scary team right now. You're seeing a young, confident football team that's flying around making plays. And Jordan Poyer spoke on something that I can't go through a recap of this game without mentioning. Josh Allen spoke on it. He didn't speak to the media. He spoke to the team, and I know some people got their feathers ruffled when they found out Josh says F words, but that's news to some people. But anyways, Juju Smith-Schuster dancing on the Bills logo at midfield. I have my thoughts on this. I kind of gave them on the post-game show on the Cold Front Report last night. So Jeff, give me your general synopsis about how you felt about Juju Smith-Schuster recording a TikTok at midfield on the Bills logo.
I mean, he's a grown man. He plays in the NFL. If that's how he wants to spend his pregame dancing, then go ahead. I'm sure that there will be many teenagers and middle schoolers who will be emulating Juju's dance moves. He might be very popular among gatherings of sixth graders or maybe eighth graders over the next week for that dance. I know it was a cool dance. I'd never seen anything like it. But good for him that he's 24 years old. He gets paid millions of dollars to play in the NFL, and he wants to spend his time dancing. I mean, if that's how he wants to spend his time, then good for him. But you pissed the Bills off. And I mean, if you needed any other reason to get the Bills up for that game, then there you go. I don't know. We'll see if he goes and makes one again. I mean, I don't know. Those are my thoughts. I'm sure he's very popular amongst the 13 to 17-year-old demographic the next week. But amongst us, maybe not as much.
You say that so calmly. I'm sure he's popular amongst 13 and 17-year-olds. Sure.
But to the rest of us, he just kind of looks, we're kind of confused as to what he's doing. I mean, I don't have the app. If I did, maybe I'd appreciate it. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I don't have the app either. I don't know what the hype is about it. I see these TikToks. I don't know. I don't enjoy whatever. I enjoy the memes, but I think people like Juju ruin it for people. And Juju, I don't know. The Bills took that as bulletin board material, and you saw a motivated performance by the Bills on the defensive side of the ball, more so than the offense in that first half. And you could tell, I don't know. See, I'm the kind of guy that watched a guy like Terrell Owens do that one time, and then some odd years later, it was pulled out of the dirt to say why he should or shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. And yet, here's this ass clown dancing at the 50-yard line on the Bills logo in a visiting stadium. Oh, he's done it all season. I get that. I mean, I don't know. Personally, I thought the way the Bills handled that situation was immaculate. I thought they handled it perfectly because, Jeff, I don't know if you saw this, but a couple weeks ago when the Titans played the Ravens, you saw some Titans players kind of crossing in to the Ravens area to practice and warm up prior to the game. And you also saw John Harbaugh walk out to the field and tell players on the opposing team to, move. And that's a big no-no in the NFL, to talk to an opposing team's players. You can't do, I'm not saying you can't do that, but it is very much so frowned upon. And what ultimately happened is there was an altercation. I'm not going to say the sidelines cleared because they didn't, but there was players from both sides that ultimately gathered near midfield, and there was an altercation. There was a confrontation. And what you saw happen was an emotional football team like the Tennessee Titans went out there and pounded in the Ravens. That's what happened. And apply this to the Bills. Apply this scenario to the Bills and what you think would happen. The Steelers are known to be an emotional football team that thrive off of those kind of situations. If Sean McDermott or anybody were to go out there and tell Juju this, that, or the third, he's being disrespectful or whatever, they had an issue with him dancing on the logo. Say that were to have happened. Okay, that's emotional fuel for a Steelers team like that with a guy like Mike Tomlin, a team that is an emotional team. They have their swings, ups and downs, and that would be an upswing from an emotional football team prior to a huge game on Sunday Night Football with a lot of implications regarding the first 3 seeds in the AFC playoffs. I thought the Bills handled this perfectly because what they did is they didn't go out there and start yelling and start a confrontation or a fight before the game. They just took note of it and they carried on about their business. And you saw that defense have a motivated performance for 4 quarters. And when you hold an offense like that to 15 points, that is a motivated performance, in my opinion. Obviously, Ben isn't what he used to be, and his 50 attempts per game is starting to catch up to him. And I think we saw that, like you alluded to, with that deep pass to Levi Wallace, which was grossly underthrown, and Wallace made the most athletic play of his career catching that play. But I thought the way the Bills handled that situation was perfect, and I don't know. I wouldn't have done any different if I were the Bills, because they just took note of it. They moved on. And Josh said, hey, they let them do all the talking. Let them do all the effing dancing. We come here to effing work. And I left one of the effings out of the graphic that I posted, so I apologize. But, yeah, the Bills handled that like professionals. And that was definitely not a professional situation, in my opinion. And that's not discrediting the Bills in any way, shape, or form. But I don't know. There's something about grown-ass men recording TikToks at midfield of a professional football stadium's logo that just rubs me the wrong way.
And if he's doing it every game, isn't he pissing off every team?
See, this is the thing. Is people say it's kind-hearted and kind-spirited or whatever. And it's just funny, and it's like, oh, he does it every. Okay, all right. That Terrell Owens should have been a first ballot Hall of Famer, because we all know Terrell Owens wasn't being shy about that. Maybe Juju Smith-Schuster is a quiet instigator that likes the attention, and he plays the victim in that situation. Maybe that's what it is. Because if you ask me, if I'm playing football and I see some dude start recording some TikTok at midfield of my home stadium, would I take offense to it? Slightly. Is that a little old school? Maybe. Is that a little dinosaur thought? Maybe. But it's a competitive game. And, you respect your opponents, and you expect them to respect you in the way you respect them. And you certainly wouldn't go out there to midfield and start dancing on their logo and then, not expect to get something back after you lose that game, and not expect these Bills players to have said something or acknowledge it in any way, shape, or form, considering there wasn't an altercation that led to that came about from it.
Yeah, and he's going to keep doing it. I mean, that's just his thing. That's kind of developed into his identity, and I'm sure that some people like him for it, but the rest, the majority of people are just going to know him as TikTok boy. So if that's the path that he wants his career to go down, then I guess good for him. But I don't know. It's interesting now that it's gained some more traction. I mean, I guess if you're watching the Steelers every week, you can see why, people would repeatedly not like this. But I don't know if that's what he wants to be known as in his career, as the TikTok guy, then I guess he can be the TikTok guy. I certainly wouldn't want to be the TikTok guy, but if he does, then good for him.
And if he's not doing this to try and poke at the other team, then why did he do it in Dallas after he scored a touchdown? He tried to run to the star, just like.
And why does he do it while the other team is on the field? I mean, maybe they can't get on the field before warmups because of COVID protocols, but I'm sure that he can get out there when there's not Bills players surrounding him and do it, or whoever they're playing, wherever they're playing. I'm sure that he can get onto that logo when there's not other people there, if he really didn't want to make that big of a deal out of it.
Yeah, if he's not trying to make a big deal out of it, then it sounds like he's taking every path of doing this, like to make a big deal out of it. He tried to do it after a touchdown, for Christ's sake, versus the Cowboys in the dome. Like, if there's nothing disrespectful, there's that. Like, we saw Terrell Owens get jacked over that. We saw that brought up from questionable things in his past because of that. And we just have Juju Smith-Schuster. It's just like, oh, he's just recording TikToks, guys. He's just recording. No, bump that. That's stupid. It's all stupid. But speaking of stupid, Darrell Williams was stupid good in this game. And with that, I want to talk about the studs and duds. Darrell Williams is my first stud for this week. You can find a lot of studs. There's a lot of reasons why the Bills won this game. But I felt like none more so than Darrell Williams and his ability to maintain what is the hottest pass rusher in football, and that of TJ Watt. And you saw the pressure kind of getting to Allen along the interior with players like Alualu, Tuitt, and Cameron Hayward. But TJ Watt was held at bay in this game. And Darrell Williams, you saw him, you didn't hear much from him. All you heard was a holding and a false start. And if you're playing one of the best pass rushers in football, that's all you had to show for it, that's fine. And this performance, in my opinion, this is what sold it to me for Darrell Williams. And I want the Bills to re-sign him. And if that's over Matt Milano or what have you, that's perfectly fine by me. Because the Bills have been searching for quality tackle play on the right side of their offensive line for so long. And they have found it with Daryl Williams. You're talking about a guy who was brought in from Carolina, who was at one point in time considered to be one of the best right tackles in football and was an all-pro in his own right. And he went through some injuries. He went through some turbulences regarding where he should play along the offensive line. And Carolina, in my opinion, completely mismanaged that situation. And it's evident that they did, considering he comes to Buffalo and he refines himself as an all-pro right tackle in the National Football League. And the Bills haven't had right tackle play of this caliber. I don't remember. I don't remember the last time they had a damn good right tackle, because it's been a really, really long time. And Daryl Williams, after this performance, he proved it to me. Because it's not just – no, I'm not basing the premises of why they should re-sign Daryl Williams on one performance against TJ Watt. That's stupid. And that's taking what I'm saying out of context entirely. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is Daryl Williams has played damn good football for 13 games this season. He has. He has played really good football for 4 quarters every game this season. Every game that he has started, I don't think there's a game where I said, wow, Daryl Williams, he had a bad game this week. Not a single time. Not a single time. And we're talking about a position where the Bills didn't even know who they wanted to start there last year, where they were rotating Cody Ford, and they were rotating Ty Nsekhe, and Ty Nsekhe was slightly better, and Cody Ford was really bad. There's nothing said about the right tackle this year. And the fact that the Bills have a right tackle solidified in that position, I think has a lot to do with the offensive resurgence that we have seen this year. And obviously, it has a lot to do with Brian Daboll. Obviously, it has a lot to do with Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. But it starts and ends at the line of scrimmage in this game. And Daryl Williams has done a damn good job in every single one of his starts. And he deserves every penny he's going to command. And, we'll talk about that in a second. But I'm on board for extend Daryl Williams. I'm starting that train. You need to sign this guy. I wouldn't say 5-6 years. I doubt they're going to sign a 5-year contract. But Daryl Williams is an intricate part of this offensive line. If he didn't prove it to you on Sunday, I'm not sure what performance will.
I thought he did well against Watt, and the fact that we didn't really see or hear TJ Watt's name that much. The first few snaps, the first couple series, I thought that Watt was getting to him. Williams, he looked, I don't want to say he looked overwhelmed, but he looked like he just needed to get a hold on him, to kind of adjust to what Watt was throwing at him. And once he did that for the vast majority of this game, he really did a nice job. I mean, you see Williams, he gets off the ball fast. He's not super, and that really helps him get his feet shuffling back, which, Clayton, as you and I know, it's imperative. Is it playing tackle, your feet are the most imperative part, and it's the biggest asset that you have and able to slow down those pass rushers. And I thought he did a really good job, and the Bills' offensive line does deserve some credit in the second half of this Pittsburgh game for how the Bills were able to come back and start putting some points on the board, because the first half, Josh couldn't do anything. The offensive line as a whole was not good in the first half. But the second half, they really did adjust, and Daboll was able to figure out pass protections that worked, Josh was able to get the ball out of his hands and find Stephon Diggs, who is my stud of the week. I know that's kind of a beaten down one, but I mean, I said earlier on the show, it seems that the Buffalo offense goes how Stephon Diggs goes. He has 64 catches in the team's last 5 games, and he was instrumental on the third down quarter touchdown drives. And every time the Buffalo Bills play for the rest of this season, Diggs is going to get a ton of attention from opposing secondaries, and that benefits the entire offense. So he's my stud this week because he looked absolutely unstoppable at several moments in this game. I mean, he's a guy who can just take over a drive on his own, and teams know that they're going to throw to him, but there's not much you can do about it. And Diggs, another stud honor for me this week.
And, Lone mentions it in the comments. Shout out to Lone Wolf, always a faithful viewer. Williams will get $10 million next season. And I think, yeah, he will. I think there could be some room for I'm not going to say negotiation, but there's some conversations to be had about Daryl Williams, and do I think he could potentially make a lot on open market considering what tackles make and how some subpar tackles have been overpaid in the past? Yeah, I absolutely do. I think this guy could make a killing and he could get his money this offseason. Let's not forget he signed a $9 million contract to stay in Carolina in the season before this, and he is only making $2 million this season. So I want to talk about this because we all know that the salary cap situation could be limited after a COVID season like this. And I want to ask you, Jeff, and I want to ask the chat as well. Everybody watching this, I want to see you in the comments. Drop a 1 if you'd re-sign Matt Milano. Drop a 2 if you'd rather re-sign Daryl Williams. And you can only re-sign 1. But, Jeff, gun to your head, if you can only re-sign 1 of Matt Milano or Daryl Williams, who would it be?
That's a tough question. I think it depends on what you're doing at each of those positions over the offseason. And my mind naturally goes to linebacker is easier to replace than a good offensive tackle. However, I think I'm going Matt Milano. I mean, he's so valuable. He's so valuable. And who else do you have on this roster that can be your coverage linebacker like Milano can? I mean, you're looking at, I know that Travis Kelce is an almost impossible ask of a linebacker, but you're looking at Travis Kelce is a guy that you're going to have to guard in the playoffs. You're going to have to figure out how to stop him. And several other AFC teams have great tight ends. Look at Darren Waller on the Raiders. That's a team you could run into in the playoffs down the line. And having Matt Milano to do those is to take those assignments is going to be invaluable. Now, I understand the importance of tackles. And I really think that this is going to come down to what you can do to replace each of them in the offseason. And I think it's going to be tough. Now, Matt Milano, I am not worried about Milano's injury concerns. I mean, I know that that's kind of becoming a trend, especially with the injury this year, but he really hadn't missed that many games before this season. And I don't know. That's a tough, and it's a tough question right now. And it's the reason that we're asking that question is because you could really go either way with it. But I think that'll come down to the offseason roster management. But if I had to have one of the two right now, I'm taking Matt Milano because he's proved more to me. Now, Daryl Williams has been great this season, but I'm taking Milano because he's been able to do it for longer. And I think that I just put all of my trust in Matt Milano completely, 100%. And now has Williams earned that trust as well? Maybe. But Milano has done so a lot more. And so I'm taking him back because I think that defense is so important. Your defense is so important. And if you're going to be chasing a championship, you're going to need to slow down great offenses. And Milano's a key part of it. And I mean, he has definitely an underrated locker room guy too. You gotta take that into consideration.
And I have been adamant about how much this defense changes with Matt Milano on the field. But matter of fact is, I understand there's people questioning his health, and rightfully so. They should question his health. And people say, well, he had a broken leg, and then aside from the torn pec or whatever. But matter of fact is, every single year he has had injury issues. That is a fact. Has he been injured every year that we have to worry about? Yes, that is a fact. He has been hurt. It's not a matter of how you interpret those injury problems, quote unquote, but they have been a problem. And is he that great of a tackler? He is a great coverage linebacker, and he fits this system like a glove. He is a great blitzer off the edge. But has Matt Milano been that great of a tackler, which is a key part of playing linebacker in the NFL? It's not far-fetched to say A.J. Klein, who I was one of the people say we should – I'm not saying – I never said cut him because that's just impractical and that's just not going to happen. But I've voiced my problems with A.J. Klein in the past. But it's not a stretch to say A.J. Klein is better in run defense because he's overall a better tackler than Matt Milano. Is he half of what Matt Milano is in coverage? Absolutely not. That can't be said. But you have Bob Babich. Bob Babich is one of the best linebacker coaches in the NFL. And the Bills have draft picks this year. You have a draft class that you can address holes with, such as linebacker or right tackle. But do I think that linebacker is an easier position to replace right now in today's NFL, where you see an insufficiency of offensive linemen in the NFL? Absolutely. And, someone said in the comments here that Daryl Williams is the unsung hero of this offense. And I tend to agree. It's Elliot Eisler, and I hope I said your last name right. Apologies if I didn't. But Daryl Williams has been the unsung hero. I think linebacker is easier to replace and coach up via McDermott and Frazier, a new linebacker versus a right tackle. There will be 3 times the amount of free agent linebackers out there in comparison. And I think it also, just to go off of your point, or build off of it, I should say, the quality of those players is incomparable as well. Because right now, I know that Daryl Williams is playing at an all-pro level in Buffalo in this system with this quarterback. And not a lot of people are going to say it, but Daryl Williams, why he is the unsung hero of this offense is Josh Allen takes the second most time to throw the ball in the league. And you can interpret that however you want, is that he's not reading the defense as well or what have you. But Josh Allen takes the second longest time to throw the football in the NFL. And having adequate right tackle play is an intricate part of protecting your quarterback and giving him the time necessary to find wide receivers. Should Josh Allen cut down on the time to throw? Yeah, he should. But is it necessary when you have tackles like Dion Dawkins and Daryl Williams? And if you lock up Dion Dawkins and Daryl Williams, and it's also important to note that John Feliciano is a free agent this offseason as well. So they're going to have decisions to make up front, regardless as to what their decision is with Daryl Williams. But you have not had tackle play like this at right tackle, to my recollection, in a very long time. You have not had that quality of play along the edges of your offense in a very long time. And it is an intricate part as to why you are successful as an offense with the quarterback that you have with Josh Allen. I don't know. I'm taking Daryl Williams every single time. I understand there's issues and there's concerns with his longevity and his knee, but I don't see a valid replacement or an adequate replacement for Daryl Williams. Obviously, you're not going to plug and play anyone. Ford is not alone. I agree with you. Ford is not a tackle. You're not putting Cody Ford at right tackle. Ford was bad at right tackle. He was really, really bad at right tackle, and I don't want to see him play tackle again for this football team. I really don't. You're putting Josh Allen in harm's way if you put Cody Ford at right tackle again. I'd rather give Daryl Williams every penny that he wants to keep him in Buffalo than put Cody Ford at right tackle again, because the Bills' offensive line is infinitely better with Daryl Williams at right tackle in comparison to that of Cody Ford. So I'm of the belief that you bring back Daryl Williams. I think you can replace linebacker. I think you can bring a guy in who's a better tackler than Matt Milano. It can give you just as much in coverage. There's nothing saying you can't. You have a first-round pick. Is it going to be a late first-round pick this year? We all hope so. I hope they have the 32nd pick and they trade back and get more picks. I don't know. But there is linebackers to be had in this draft class, and I think the Bills would be well-advised to let Matt Milano walk in free agency. But I think a wrinkle to this that all of us aren't really – that neither of us have brought up is both of these players could potentially take less to stay at Buffalo. And we have seen players in the past like Tre'Davious White, who I thought that was an awful contract for him. It was a great contract for the Bills. I thought Tre'Davious White left a lot of money on the table to stay in Buffalo. And, that speaks volumes as to what players want, how players feel about this front office and this organization. But it's very likely, in my opinion, that both of these players could potentially take a lot less to stay with the Bills. Jeff, do you think that's a wrinkle in this that we possibly haven't spoke of yet?
Well, I want to bring up a couple rebuttals. I mean, I think that, Josh Allen's the reason that Josh Allen's, average time before he throws the ball so high is because he extends plays so much. I mean, he has escapability. We see him run around in the backfield so much before he releases the ball, and that's something that not a lot of quarterbacks do, especially the way that Allen does it, escaping to his right so much and while having his eyes downfield. And I think that contributes to that statistic of why Allen holds the ball so much, and I think it's also due to the play calling. And so as far as is Daryl Williams, I know somebody said, Patrick said in the comments, escapes the right, making Williams looking even better. I agree with that. I think that, Allen's awareness of, that edge rusher coming to the right is right in front of him. He can see that. And he's so good escaping to his right, being able to throw that ball downfield and even across his body downfield. I think that does aid with Williams. Now, that's not a shot on Daryl Williams. He's played well. We agree on that. But as far as Matt Milano's durability, before this season, I mean, he had played 3 seasons before this. His rookie year, he played all 16 games. His second year in the league, he played 13 games. And last year, he played 15. So he's missed 3 games in 3 years up to this season. I mean, you don't want the injuries going forward if it's going to be a recurring thing after this year. But until this year, I don't think that was really that much of a concern. I mean, players miss games all the time in the NFL. And so 3 games in 3 years isn't that much of an issue to me. And, I said to start this that replacing a linebacker is easier than replacing an offensive lineman. I think that's definitely true in free agency as well. But as far as the draft, if you're looking at replacing Matt Milano with a draft pick, Why can't you replace Darrell Williams with a draft pick? There's talent in that draft in both positions. There always is. There are always offensive linemen getting picked in the first round, and I'm sure that there's somebody out there that can do that job. Now, if you think that Darrell Williams is valuable enough to this team to where he should be re-signed over Matt Milano, then yeah, you sign a backer. But I'm not sold on that yet. And I think that maybe the next month of the season will be very telling. And also, we'll have to see what the Bills do in free agency, because once we see that, we'll be at a very different standpoint come to the draft. Because as you and I know, those are the two ways that you rebuild your team in the offseason.
Yeah, and it's an interesting conversation. And I understand it could be potentially a little premature, but I think coming off of the heels of a very good performance by Darrell Williams, it's appropriate to have this conversation. I think it's very much so necessary. We have to. I want to have some sort of basis that we can go back to when we have, because we're going to have the same discussion again. It's inevitable. These are two of the Bills' biggest unrestricted free agents going into this offseason, but there's a lot of football left to be played this year. And speaking of which, the Bills have another matchup with an AFC opponent in that of the Denver Broncos and Jeff Uvino's twin, Drew Lock. So this game,
that's a narrative now, isn't it?
I'm gonna beat that like a dead horse. This guy's out of the league, dude. I'm sorry. It's a running joke I've had with Jeff. I only said it a couple times, but he does kind of look like Drew Lock. And I'm sorry I don't have a picture right now to pull up so you guys can see exactly how you look like Drew Lock. You look just like him. I'm sorry. He's not an ugly guy, if that makes you feel better.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Jeff, what is your biggest worry about this, potentially flirting with potent Broncos offense?
Yeah, well, I'll start by saying this isn't a bad Broncos defense. They're first in red zone defense and 10th in passing defense, and I don't think there's a defense in the league that can stop Josh Allen right now. But the main key for Buffalo in this one is for the Bills defense to not let this one get away from them. Keep this Broncos offense in check, because they're not great. The Broncos have only scored over 20 points in 5 different games this season. So I think if you can keep their offense in check, Allen will provide more than enough points to win this one. And, this Buffalo defense, they've faced units this year that are superior to this Broncos team. I think that, turnovers are going to be a big part of this. I think the Bills defense is going to force 3 of them. I think that you can force mistakes from Drew Lock and from this offense, and that will be a big part. But my key really this week, this is a game the Bills should win. We all agree on that. And so you're just going to not let the Broncos offense, kind of get out of hand, get ahead, you have to play from behind.
Let me ask you this. Is this a trap game?
There are no trap games when Sean McDermott is your head coach.
There it is. That's the answer I wanted.
Because there is no such thing as a trap game when you have a head coach that prepares his team so well week in and week out, that is so monotonous about his preparation for every game. Now, normally, yes, this would be, because you get off of 2 huge wins in prime time. Now you're playing the Saturday game against an inferior opponent before you play 2 divisional rivals. But Sean McDermott is not going to allow this to be a trap game. The Buffalo Bills mindset right now is not going to allow this to be a trap game. They're still pissed about the Hail Mary in Arizona because they've been hearing about it ever since. This is not a trap game, because trap games don't exist with Sean McDermott. And I think the Bills know that, and they're prepared for that going into this Broncos game.
Exactly. Because I've seen these people talking. I don't always chime in, but I always read. And I've seen people saying, oh, this is a trap game. You have 2 divisional games after. There is no such thing as a trap game for the Buffalo Bills when Sean McDermott is your head coach. And you hit it the nail on the head, Jeff. I don't need to reiterate your sentiment. I don't need to say it any different way. I don't need to say the same thing twice and just, waste 3 minutes of these people's time. You're right. There is no such thing as a trap game when Sean McDermott is your head coach. And I tend to agree with you that this Bills defense is going to have their opportunities to force this young Broncos offense into making mistakes. You look at what they have available to them. I think that, we were just talking about Matt Milano. This could be the game that you see him come back in a more extensive, in a more extensive role. And do I hope to see it? Not as much as, his injury plays a large factor into that. So if he's healthy, yeah, I'm welcoming Matt Milano back with open arms and a full role this week to play against a quality dynamic tight end in that of Noah Fant. This Broncos offense has a ton of potential with guys like Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler and guys like Noah Fant, and not to mention Melvin Gordon and Phillip Lindsay. So they have a well-rounded personnel, but they've really only gotten as far as their quarterback play has allowed them to this year. And when you talk about a quarterback like Drew Lock, who's erratic and inconsistent, and I don't mind Drew Lock as a prospect. I didn't mind him coming out of college. I thought the Broncos made an excellent decision drafting him, but there is a lot left to prove, and there's a lot of meat on the bone for Drew Lock if he is going to be their long-term solution at quarterback. And I see a lot. I see a huge opportunity for this Bills defense. And in my opinion, this can't be the game for the Bills defense where they allow this Broncos team to run it down their throat, and they allow this Broncos team to establish run and establish play action. That is the biggest key in this game, to maintain their rushing attack with Melvin Gordon, with Phillip Lindsay, because that's what makes this offense dynamic. If they're able to establish the run game, establish the line of scrimmage, and also establish play action, that's when you see run into issues with big playmakers like KJ Hamler and Jerry Jeudy and Noah Fant. That's where you're going to run into problems. Do I have confidence with this Bills secondary against those weapons? Absolutely. Is Jerry Jeudy a damn good talent? Oh, yeah, he is. But the experience the Bills have in the secondary showed up on film last week when playing young wide receivers like James Washington, like Chase Claypool, and Deontay Johnson. It's going to show up again this week as the Bills have a lot of experience. And I don't think that this crew of skill players is good enough to beat them. I simply don't. And I don't think Drew Lock is good enough to beat them as well. I think the Bills are going to fluster this young quarterback. And also, an important thing that Bills fans should keep in mind if you're worried about this Broncos rushing attack, like I'm kind of leaning towards it. If there's any concern I have in this game, it's the Broncos rushing attack. But a point of optimism for you people is this Bills rush defense has only allowed 100 yards, and they've held their opposing teams under 100 yards rushing in 4 of their last performances. The only one being against Kyler Murray and the Arizona Cardinals. So I think this Bills run defense has been a lot better. And I think if the Bills offense can execute against this defense and get out to a 2-possession lead and force them to throw the ball, you're going to see plenty of mistakes by this passing attack for the Denver Broncos and Drew Lock.
Yeah, and I don't think that this is going to be the defense that slows down Josh Allen, even though this is a respectable side, especially in the red zone. Like I said, number 1 red zone defense in the NFL. Broncos have been, and they showed us that a few weeks ago on Sunday Night Football against the Chiefs when they really weren't allowing Mahomes and the Chiefs to finish drives. I'd look for that to happen in this game. I think the Bills will be able to move the ball well. I'm going to look for Tyler Bass to hit a few field goals, especially at altitude. And I think that the Bills, it really just, I want to see continuity from the Bills defense because they've really been good. But is this team that we've seen the second half of the year, this Bills defense, is that their identity? Or is their identity the first half of the year when they really struggled a lot more? I want to see that continuity, especially against an opponent like Denver, where we're not really keyed in on, it's not laser focused. Maybe it is for the Bills, but I don't think it is for Bills Mafia like it was against the Steelers. We talked about all these things the Bills have to do to beat the Steelers, whereas now going into this Broncos game, it's the Bills are better, so they should win, right? They don't have to do things, they should, because they're better. So I want to see that continuity, and I want to see them beat a team like Denver that they're supposed to beat.
Yeah, and this is a big game. It's a huge. I'm not going to say it's a huge game or make this game sound bigger than it is, but it's a game the Bills have to win. It's on the schedule. They're in your conference. I don't care if this team had no wins going into this game. You need to beat this team, regardless of how you do it. And like Lone Wolf says in the comments, the real question is, can Denver beat us, not the other way around? There's without a doubt in my mind that the Bills are capable of beating the Denver Broncos. Whether the Broncos can beat the Bills, that's to be determined. We will see. I don't know about you, Jeff, but I'm leaning towards the Bills in this one pretty heavily. How are you feeling? What's your prediction? What do you got?
Yeah, the Bills are going to win the game because we said there's no trap games with Sean McDermott, and the Bills are a better team. I have an inkling that this is going to be a low-scoring game. The over-under is sitting at about 50 right now. I think that's high when we're looking at some of the other overs-unders for the week around the league. Like I said, I think the Bills offense will do what it needs to do as it has every week. And the defense, I'm hoping to get some more of that solid play out of them. I think the Bills will win this game without too much trouble. I'm going to say it's going to be 26-13, which I know might be on the low end of what some people think this Bills offense is going to produce this week. But look for field goals instead of touchdowns for the Bills. But I don't think that Josh Allen's going to be slowed down this week. And then you got the Patriots in Miami, 26-13 Bills.
I agree with you, Jeff. I think they're going to get their 11th win of the season against this Broncos team. And that's not to discredit this team or talk down to them at all. They are a team that, in my opinion, is on the rise. They're a few pieces away from being, in contention in the AFC West. Now, obviously, the biggest part is their quarterback in Drew Lock. And if he can execute, I simply don't see it happening against this Bills defense, which right now they're firing on all cylinders. If they were facing the Bills earlier in the season, would I be a tad more concerned? Absolutely. But here at this point in stage of the season, with the Bills riding the biggest wave of confidence in the NFL, with the Bills riding the biggest wave of motivation, I feel like that Hail Mary pass, we keep talking about it. The Bills are still pissed off about it. And that's really what's fueling this rampage that they're on, going 6-1 in their last 7 games. And I don't think I'm not changing the tune this week. I think the Bills win this one pretty handedly. I'm gonna give them 5 more points that you gave them, Jeff. I'm gonna say the Bills win this one 31-10. I don't see the Broncos being very productive in this game, and I see the Bills defense giving Drew Lock all sorts of problems. You could potentially see 2 quarterbacks for that team in this game. Take care of business, and like Tremaine Edmonds said at the end of the game last week, don't get complacent. They have not achieved everything they're going to achieve this season just yet, as a potential 13-3 season for the Buffalo Bills could very well be on the horizon. So
yeah, I mean, and wouldn't that be something? 13-3.
Oh,
but there's a long way to go before then. I know a lot of Bills fans last night were getting excited, almost clinched the playoff spot, but this week will be the time to do that. Get that done.
It was nuts, dude. That's crazy.
That was great. It was a good game.
And, before I get out of here, before I let Jeff give his dues, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Having us change to a morning schedule, there was a bit of uncertainty, to say the least, as to what will happen in terms of viewership, in terms of how many people would be chiming in the comments section. I think it's safe to say that people were commenting more so in this show than we typically did when we were doing PM shows. So I'm glad a lot of people tuned in. I'm glad you all enjoyed the show. Thank you for tuning in. I hope this will be the norm. And, coming to mornings at around 10:30 on Tuesdays is going to be the regular schedule going forward. And Jeff and I look forward to it. We love doing the live feed. We switched the live feed earlier this season. We had to switch times due to personal reasons on my end. But, it's an opportunity, and we're looking forward to it. I hope we can brighten your day at work a little bit. But with that, Jeff, please tell the people where they can find you and what they have to look forward to, as you're going to be a busy man. It's starting to get to be that season. So what do they have to look forward to when they find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at RealJUVEINO. We've got all of our Bills coverage coming from Cold Front Report for this last month of the season, as well as college basketball is in full swing. St. Bonaventure, my school, my team that I cover, they're starting their season today. They play Akron in their season opener at 2:00, and we're gonna have lots of Bonnie's basketball coverage all winter, as well as a bunch of other stuff. So if you would kindly want to tune into that, find me on Twitter there, and also my Instagram at JeffUVEINO would be much appreciated. And thank you guys as always for watching this. Clayton does a great job with the production of this show, making it so I have the whole screen here right now, and all the other things we have on the show. So we appreciate you guys tuning in, and hopefully we'll have you with us going forward with our new AM time slot. We're at the same time as the big dogs. So
let's compete, folks. But anyways, be sure to follow the Cold Front Report on Twitter, Instagram, and like us on Facebook, and subscribe on YouTube. That's at Cold Front Report on Twitter, at Cold Front Report _Bills News on Instagram, Buffalo Bills Cold Front Report on Facebook. And be sure to like the Overtime Podcast Facebook page as well while you're on that platform. And it's just Cold Front Report on YouTube. Be sure to check out our new state-of-the-art webpage, which we just launched. folks, I can't compare it to a lot, but it is immaculate. You have to see this webpage for yourself. Be sure to go check it out, www.coldfrontreport.com. And if you'd like to find me on Twitter at CFR Clayton, and if you'd like to find me on Instagram, it is the same exact handle at CFR CLAYTON. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for listening. Stay safe, stay healthy. And this has been the Overtime Podcast presented by the Cold Front Report.